YouTube family, what's good with you? It's your boy 2A in LA, and as always, fam, anything I say in this episode, prior episodes, and future episodes is just my personal opinion. You shouldn't take it as fact. You shouldn't take it as law. Always do your own homework and come up with your own conclusions. Right about now, fam, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and tap that like button for your boy. If you're new to the channel, I'm going to ask you to please go ahead and subscribe. I think you are going to enjoy the content. And if you don't, look, fam, you can always unsubscribe later. All right? And if you're an existing supporter, fam, I appreciate you more than you can possibly imagine. All right? Look, let's get this episode rolling. So look, fam, it is here, fam. The day we have been dreading is here. As you guys know, the ATF has dropped their new pistol brace rule. It is not a law, so I won't call it that. It is a rule that said if you break this rule, you can find yourself in jail for up to like a decade, I think. And so it's a rule that needs to be certainly taken seriously. I did a video a while back kind of talking about it kind of on being, you know, on the horizon, if you will. And fam, I gotta say that it is here now, and it is worse. It really is worse than I even originally participated. So look, fam, I told you guys back then in the very first video that I did on the pistol brace ban that really there are not a lot of alternatives here. And if you're in California, it's worse for us than anybody else even. And so I'll go through that. But essentially, to comply, I told you guys, you only had a few options. Number one option was to turn over your firearm with the brace to ATF. Nobody is doing that shit. For real. Nobody's doing that. That just doesn't make any kind of sense. Alright, so that's the first problem. Or number two, second option you have is you can take off the upper that is sub 16 inches and put on a 16-inch upper. Well, to me, that seems stupid too, because if I wanted a 16-inch rifle, I would have bought a 16-inch rifle. Obviously, I got it in a pistol format because I didn't want that kind of length, right? So that seems stupid. And for me, somebody who already has several 16-inch rifles, I don't need another one. You know, so that was silly. That's a silly option as well. And now, really, there's only two other options. Option number 3 is you can register it. Now, I'm going to go into detail in a minute about why registration is a problem. So we'll definitely circle back to that. And then lastly, you can remove the pistol brace, and all is right with the world. Mysteriously, your gun becomes safe. But now you got, like, if your pistol has requires a buffer tube for operation, now you got this thing sticking out the back that looks crazy as all get out, right? And I'm going to do a subsequent video on some options that you have relative to alternatives to pistol braces. So be looking out on that video probably in the next 30 days or so. But you can take the brace off. And there's a couple different options. You know, you can run your pistol with a sling and kind of use So there's a couple of different options. You can run your pistol with a sling and kind of put the sling out and extend out and let the sling kind of operate as your brace to give you a better foundation relative to that. So that's an option. You can run it just like you would a handgun. Obviously, though, that creates a little less stable platform, and it's very similar at that point to a handgun. So then I really don't know like what the real benefit is, except that it's probably heavier with a longer barrel than your typical handgun. So from that perspective, less felt recoil, and maybe more accurate depending on the caliber of the bullet that you're shooting. So that's an option. And like I said, I'm going to do a video on a couple of other options that I'll actually show you and go over with you coming up. Now let's talk about registration. So I'm going to talk about it first from a standpoint outside of California. Because in California, all our weapons are already registered. You can't buy a gun private party. It has to go through an FFL. And so all transactions, so every firearm that I have is registered already. So from that perspective, registering again with the ATF, the ATF already has all my information. Department of Justice already has all my information. So I would not be upset about that as maybe somebody who is in another state that doesn't have that requirement. But there's a distinct problem with California. Like I said, we'll get back to that in a minute. I want to talk about the people who are outside the state of California who have the ability to buy, braced. Historically, have had the ability to buy braced pistols, private party, and you haven't had to register those with anybody. You're in a tough position. Like I said, you have all the same options that we have here in California. You can turn your gun over to the ATF, which I think is stupid. You can change it to a 16-inch rifle. I think that's stupid because if you wanted that, you would have did it already. So I don't think that makes a lot of sense. You can take the pistol brace off, or you can register it as a short barrel rifle. So here is the issue with registration. A lot of you are telling yourselves, well, I don't want to register my gun. Nobody knows that I have it. Registration is the first step to confiscation. All those things are true. You just run the risk, obviously. I don't think the ATF is necessarily going to go door to door looking for people, but more on that in a minute. But once your weapon is registered, that is a possibility for sure, right? But bottom line is, if something happens, you get pulled over, whatever the case may be, a search is conducted and you have it on you, you are at the mercy of whatever the law enforcement agency is that's doing it. You're at their mercy, and there are real life consequences to that. So that's the downside of non-compliance. Well, let me tell you about the downside to compliance. Above and beyond just, them knowing that you have this weapon. There are so many, this rule is so problematic on so many different levels. So let's start off with this, right? The ATF is asking you to do something that they have really never done in the history. Usually the way it works is, before you can manufacture or build or put together a short barrel rifle, you have to ask them permission. That's the way the system works. So you don't buy the short barrel rifle, possess it, and then ask, no. You are now admitting that you're breaking the rule, right? And you can be subject to prison time and fines and on, right? What you have to do is you have to say, Mr. ATF, I would like to build a short barrel rifle. Here's my $200. Here's what I'm planning to do. Please send that back. And you send that in. It takes 6 to 8 months for you to get that back. Once you get it back, then you can assemble your firearm. No muss, no fuss. What they're doing now is they're telling you, they're saying, hey, you are currently, based on the current rule, in possession of an illegal firearm. We're going to give you a grace period, 120 days, to go ahead and send it in. Send in your pictures and everything else. We're going to waive the $200, and you send it in, and then we'll send you back the stamp. But essentially what you're doing is, when you send in, number one, you are admitting that you are in possession of an illegal firearm based on their rule. So in my opinion, and I'm not an attorney, this is not legal advice, but you are self-incriminating yourself, right? Now, all that may be fine, but here is the other problem. Just like when you're putting the rifle together and you do it the traditional way, you send it out, takes 6-8 months to get back, and then you can assemble it, then you're okay. Well, you're not okay. Once it's 120 days is up, you send it out, it takes 6 to 8 months from the time that 120 days expires to the time you receive approval. You are in possession of an illegal firearm, fam. So don't think, oh, I sent my paperwork out, I'm good, they won't enforce it. Now you have to rely on the goodness and the kind heart of ATF agents not to enforce it, fam. To me, there is no good alternative here. Even if you do everything you can to comply, you take the pictures, you fill out the form, you send it in, there is no guarantee that it's going to get approved. There is no guarantee on a timeline when it's going to get approved. Like I said, it takes 6 to 8 months during normal circumstances. Now, they're about to get bombarded with millions upon millions upon millions of applications, and you think you're going to turn that around in a timely manner? And if you're in possession of it, while you're waiting for it, it's past this 120 days, you're in possession of an illegal firearm, even though you did everything in your power to try to make it legal. It's problematic, fam. It is problematic. I don't know, honestly, other than giving away firearms that you paid a lot of money for. Or removing braces. And again, I'm not even going to get into the fact that they're making you remove or destroy the brace. I'll come back to that in a minute. Remove or destroy the brace that you paid good money for without even compensating. I'm not even going to get into the legality of that and how messed up that is. But yeah, so if you are outside of California and you want to try to comply by registering the firearm, then just know that your problems don't end when you send off that paperwork. That weapon, once the 120 days passes, that weapon, based on my understanding, is illegal and subject to enforcement. And if for any reason you get declined, it is illegal and subject to enforcement. And you have provided them a picture of your gun and said, here it is. Here's the serial number, and here's where I live, and here's where I am, and here's where the gun. That could never go wrong, right? That could never go left. And so it's problematic from that perspective. Now, let's talk about California people. A lot of California people aren't going to be affected because AR pistols are very hard to come by in the state of California. But there are people like me who own braced firearms in the state of California legally and subject to, the laws of the state. But here's the issue. If I want to keep my braced firearm and I'm willing to submit my paperwork because I don't feel a big deal about registering it because all my firearms are registered anyway, so I want to send it in. You can't. In the state of California by law, my understanding is that, in the state of California by law, you can't own an NFA item. And my understanding is there is no exception for this new rule. And so, really, I can't send it in, even if I wanted to. So that's not an option. Destroying the gun, obviously, isn't an option. So really, the only thing I can do is remove the brace and deal with the after effects of how that affects the functionality of the firearm. And so that really, really sucks. I think we're kind of getting screwed over. So this whole rule, you guys, at the end of the day, the whole rule is a nightmare, and I don't think it's an accident. I think some of it is just the ATF being a government agency and bumbling and stumbling and not thinking things through properly and not being prepared. In their haste to put out a rule, they didn't think about the implementation, which, is how government entities operate, so it's going to make it problematic for everybody. So just know those are your options. There is no good option, and even if you choose to comply in your California, you can't comply really unless you remove the brace. And if you're everywhere else, even if you choose to register the firearm, just know that is just the start of the problem. This is not. There are a lot smarter people than me who understand this, acknowledge this. People like Firearms Policy Coalition, GOA, and others. There's going to be a ton of lawsuits filed. If they are just overturned bump stocks, I have a hard time thinking that pistol braces are going to survive. But that said, court cases take time. Is a judge gonna have the fortitude to do some kind of stay or restraining order to prevent the ATF from enforcing this on a national basis? We don't know. We don't know. Absent that, after the 120 days, it's going to be anybody's guess. So, I'm not going to advise you on what you should and you shouldn't do. I just wanted to inform you of the options. You can turn over your weapon to the ATF. Don't do that. You can register it, but if you register it, there's no guarantee that by doing so you'll get approved. You'll get approved in a timely manner. You very well could be rejected, and now you've incriminated yourself by providing pictures to the ATF of your illegal firearm. Right? So I think that in itself is problematic, or you can remove the brace, and take the hit. 'Cause some of these braces cost, $200, $300, $400 sometimes. So you just out that money. So yeah, there's no good solution here. It's all bad. This is terrible. I can't even call it legislation because it's not a law. It's a rule, right? That was just made up. And so, look, I don't think this is going to stand in court, but you have no idea what the result of that is going to be and how long it's going to be effect. But knowledge is power, fam. You now know your options. And while there are no good ones, at least you know what you can do to fundamentally try your best to protect yourself. All right, that's it for this, fam. Until next time, as always, take care of one another and peace.